Hey everybody, I'm Ken Brant and I'm an artist, and I created this little painting that you can do at home. Whether you're a professional artist and you've been painting for years and you're just looking for something to paint and practice, or you've never touched oil paints before in your life, this painting is for you. So I created this painting in about 30 minutes, and it's something relatively easy that I believe anybody can do. And I have some information at the end of this video on how you can acquire the reference photo so that you can download that and paint this yourself at your own leisure. And I'll have some more information at the end of the video on some this and some other things as well. So sit back and enjoy. Hello everybody. Here's the setup for this painting, One Lonely Little Plum. And I chose one plum because I wasn't going to do any extraneous other fruit or flowers or vase with it. I just wanted to do the one plum. And here's the colors. I took a look at the plum and I decided that the titanium white, cadmium yellow, cadmium red, quinacridone magenta, I got some alizarin crimson, cerulean blue, raw umber, and ivory black. And those were the colors that I felt would best represent this plum based on what I was seeing in my setup. So because I had the green sheet for the background, and I chose the green because the plum is kind of it's more red than blue, so I knew that the two colors would complement each other very well. So I went with the green, but I wanted to make the green background a bit darker than what I was seeing in real life. So here I chose the colors of the cadmium yellow, and I mixed it in with raw umber, and that gives you this really nice olive drab green. And the more raw umber you mix in with this color, the darker it becomes, and it stays pretty much within the range of green. So that was what I was working with for the background. So I put in my darker colors first. I wanted a dark area up in the left hand corner, and I knew obviously the cast shadow for the plum that I was seeing was a darker color as well. So I placed those in first. I always try to start with my darker colors, and then I slowly work my way to the lighter colors. And then obviously I make my adjustments once all those are in place. I make my adjustments from that point. So here I am just placing in the darker colors of the background. And for the lighter color, I simply just added some titanium white and a very light touch of cerulean blue. And the reason I did that is because I knew there's like this frosty bluish color on the plum, and I knew I was going to do that with cerulean blue because it looked very much like that color. So I knew if I took some cerulean blue and mixed in with my background, this would create a balance between all the colors within the painting. So here you can see this is a mixture of the cerulean blue, titanium white, cadmium yellow, and the raw umber. And you can see it's still a very nice green. And again, I chose just a single plum. I did not want to make this painting complicated in any way. I just wanted to get this painting done in a relatively short period of time, and I knew that if I kept it simple, that I could accomplish that, and I could really concentrate on all the things that I feel are important to making a painting a good painting. You know, you want to make sure your values are correct. You want to make sure you have a good focal point. You want to make sure that your colors are balanced within the whole range of the painting. You want to make sure you have some good contrasting effects between the lights and the shadows. And these are all things that I could concentrate on, knowing that it's just one solid, one particular object that I need to concentrate on, and I could really put forth a lot more effort into that regard. Now for the pencil drawing that I put in here prior to starting, it's just, I just look at my setup and I just took my pencil and I use it's really not a pencil, it's not a graphite pencil, it's a charcoal pencil. And I just look at my object and I figure out where I want to place my object within the frame of my canvas. And I just drew in, basically it was a circle, and I said, you'll see an inside line in there. That's, I started separating out, okay, I have a darker area within the plum and I have a lighter area within the plum, and this is pretty much where those areas are. So then I just drew in the lines. So there's no shading or nothing overly complicated about the drawing. It's just an outline, just to give me a reference to where I'm going to put my colors within the painting. And I love working on the backgrounds a lot. It used to be, I used to have a very difficult time with backgrounds. It took me a long time to figure out, how to really make the background a part of the painting, so it didn't look like the object was like cut out of a piece of paper and then pasted on top of the background. It took me a while to figure out how to incorporate the subject matter into the background so everything was a cohesive painting within itself. And as you can see what I'm doing here, like I said, I got the dark area on the left, I have my cast shadow, and there are some creases on the sheet that's there, but I don't want to accent those, to make, I don't want to give my viewer any harsh lines to draw their attention to. The main focal point of this particular painting is going to be the highlight on the skin of the plum. And I knew this already before I even started the painting, that this was the area that I wanted to be my focal point. So it's always very important to know ahead of time what it is that you're going to use for your focal point. Based on what I was seeing for my setup, I knew I wanted a lighter area here on the lower left portion of the painting. I figured that would really create this atmosphere, well, not atmosphere, but it would create this look where the plum is, at least sitting on a surface. It sort of grounds it to the surface that I'm trying to paint here. So I have the dark color in the background, I have the lighter color here in the foreground, and I figured that would be a really good contrast between the two. And as long as it's blended well, it should look very nice. So again, I went with just the one plum. I didn't want to make my painting overly complicated, as I said in the beginning. And because really when you think about it, I mean, we take everything that we see for granted. It's like nothing is, we just walk through life and we hardly glance at anything. So here is a prime example that it's a plum. But I know I have enough creative ability where I can take this ordinary plum and I can paint it in such a way that the viewer will look at this painting and look at this plum in a totally different light. And that's the whole idea. We want to be able to create things from ordinary objects in life that everybody just, we just don't pay any attention to. So somebody's going to come along and take a look at this painting and go, wow, that's a beautiful plum. And that's the kind of the whole idea. So I chose, originally I wanted to do a star fruit, only because it's a unique look. It's it's not an ordinary fruit by any means. So, but I went to the store and they were all out of star fruit, so I could not use that. So I was kind of looking around, and I said, you know what? I'll just paint this plum. So here for the darker outside edge of the plum, I'm using alizarin crimson and raw umber, and that keeps it in the reddish color, but it darkens it up. Raw umber is a great color to use if you want to take a color, for example, blue or green or red, and you take raw umber and you mix it with that color, you don't actually lose the color. So alizarin crimson stays red, but you'll just get a darker version of it using the raw umber. Whereas if you put titanium white in with alizarin crimson, you start getting pink. It's not really red anymore. Raw umber is a great way to darken a color and keep it the color that you want it to stay. So basically I just could see from my setup that it had this darker color pretty much all the way around the plum. So here I am putting that in place, and I knew that for the next color, as it went from a darker value to a lighter value, I just went with straight alizarin crimson for that, without the raw umber. And this was it's still the same color, but just a different value. And here you can see that perfectly well. Now this plum did have some darker blues. Well, I wouldn't say blues, it was more like a purplish color. But based on these colors I was using here, I really didn't have to add any blues other than the cerulean blue within the color, and it really came out nice. The cerulean blue, the purpose of that was because there's like this, I don't know what it is, it's on the skin of the plum, there's like this bluish halo effect on the plum, and it's a really pretty blue. And so that's where I use the cerulean blue to kind of highlight those areas. So here I'm still using the alizarin crimson, and for the center line on this plum, I just mixed in a little bit more raw umber in with it, just to kind of darken that area up a little bit. Notice I'm not using any particular kind of brush stroke here. I am trying to keep within the movement of the shape of the object. So obviously for around the edges, I go in a semicircular motion following the contour of the plum itself. But that's not necessarily something you have to do. But your brush strokes, it does help with when you're putting in your brush strokes to follow the contour of whatever it is you're doing. It kind of helps shape that object and makes it look more realistic. Now here for this color, I'm using the Quinacridone Magenta, and it looks very similar to the alizarin crimson, but just of a lighter value, which surprised me a little bit, because when you look at the two colors on the palette, they don't look anything alike. But here on this canvas, they looked very similar, just of a different, one was lighter than the other, and they really went together well. Now here I am mixing in the cerulean blue. And I started with cerulean blue and the Quinacridone Magenta, mixed that in together. It kind of made like that little purplish color. And I knew that I wanted a much lighter color of that blue in there or along this highlight. And once those blues go in, you'll see that the plum starts to take on a really nice look. So here I lightened up the cerulean blue a little bit with some titanium white, not a lot, and it did not matter if it mixed in with the Quinacridone Magenta at all or any of the Alizarin Crimson. That doesn't bother me when the two colors mix together. In fact, I think it really helps the painting. It gives the painting a lot more character, and it just gives it an overall better look, a much more painterly look. Now obviously when you look at a painting like that up close, you're just going to see a mishmash of brush strokes and colors. It really doesn't make much sense until you stand back about 6 or 8 feet away from the painting, and then it's when things really start to, you look at it and go, it gives it a very realistic look, even though it's, it's not painted like it's a photograph. My intention is not to to paint hyper-realism in that way, but if you apply your paintbrush your paints in such a way, you can get a very realistic looking effect without using super fine details. So here I am again, just applying more of the cerulean blue in different areas, and you can see that I really didn't blend any of these colors together, because I was going to go over with my blending brush and blend those in. And once I do that and get rid of the sharper edges of the colors, the different values there, it really makes a huge difference. Now here's where I noticed that my cast shadow from the Plum needed to be a bit darker to stand out a little bit more. So this is just cadmium yellow and raw umber, but more raw umber than yellow. And you can see here I follow the contour of the Plum right along the edge, but in my mind, cast shadow kind of like flares away from the object that it's that is creating the shadow. So I like to use my brush strokes and push the paint away from the object on the outer edges, and then I do a very soft blend and try to blend those all, the lighter color and the darker colors, so it kind of really gives a really nice effect. I never worry too much about how my brush strokes appear. Sometimes when I'm looking at the painting and I'll go from one side to the other, I can see how the light is hitting the different directions of my brush strokes, and there have been a few cases where a particular brush stroke created a reflection that was unappealing, and I had to go in there and actually change the direction of the brush stroke just for that reason. I'm thinking if somebody was hanging this up on the wall and there was a light coming in through a window or something, it would do the exact same thing that the light in my studio was doing. So I didn't want that to be something that drew the person's attention to the painting. But most of the time, it doesn't really, I don't really pay too much attention which direction my brush strokes are going. So here I am going in with my blender brush, and this is where you'll start to see the plum really takes on a life of its own basically at this point. The colors are, start to blend together. I get that Quinacridone Magenta mixing in with the alizarin crimson, and then the alizarin crimson mixing in with the darker alizarin crimson and raw umber, and it really makes it look beautiful at that point. I start mixing in that blue and flaring that out a little bit into the red, and I purposely left the area of the highlight unpainted because I wanted to go in there with a mixture of cerulean blue and titanium white. So I did not want to go in with straight titanium white because nothing really in life is a true, white. Even a sheet of paper is not really white. It's a variation of that color. It could be eggshell. It might have depending on what the what's around it, it could be reflecting those different colors. So, I didn't want to go in with straight white. So a mixture of cerulean blue and titanium white is what I was going to go in there with. And that's what I'm doing right there now. I'm placing in the highlighted area. It looks white based on the colors that are around it, but it is not a true white. If I was to go over the top of that with titanium white, you'd actually see a whiter spot. And you gotta always remember when you're doing your lights. Your lights are always going to be cooler colors, which doesn't seem to make too much sense. You would think, well, a bright light would be, you think warm, like the sun creates the light and it would be a warm color. But your lights are actually going to be a cooler color. So here, titanium white is on its own a cool color, and cerulean blue is the coolest of the blues. So I have very cool colors for my highlighted area, and surrounding that are very warm colors of the alizarin crimson, Quinacridone Magenta. So it makes for a really nice contrast between the two colors, and that makes the world of difference in how the painting looks. If you were to mix cooler colors, like for example, let's say my highlight was cool and I used a cooler color for the plum, perhaps I went in with another blue and made the plum more of a bluish color, there would be a chance that the highlighted area would end up looking chalky because you have a cool color sitting on top of a cool color. As opposed to if I was to use a warm color for the highlight, like for example yellow or an orange on top of that red, then you stand a chance of actually making your painting look, it'll start to actually look a little muddy. So these are, the temperature of your colors, that plays a big important role in your painting. So I noticed, looking at my setup, I had some colors. This blue was highlighted on the darker edge of the plum, which I thought was very interesting, considering the light source was coming from the other direction, but there was some light bouncing off of the sheet and coming back onto the plum, and so I saw those reflective lights, and I kept it more on the blue side, and I really liked how that looked. Now that the colors have been blended in along the outside skin of the plum with the blending brush, you can see how it really took on a totally different shape, and you don't have those hard lines anymore. and I was very careful when I was putting in my highlight to make sure that I stippled that paint around the area so it wasn't like a very harsh highlight. I wanted that highlight to kind of blend into that blue. Now for the top here, that's just a mixture of the cadmium yellow and the raw umber, but it was a very, very light mixture, so it kind of kept it a little bit more along the, more along a yellowish green color. So basically all I'm doing now is I'm just going over the details of the plum, looking at the edges and just looking at, I kept looking at my setup. I said, oh, I need a little bit more blue here, I need a little more blue there. It was a very light bluish color around the top of the plum and going down the crease along the side of the plum. So I wanted to make sure I got that blue in there and really showed that off, because I just love that color and I thought it was very important that you see that within this plum. It didn't stand out quite as much on the setup in real life, but I wanted to bring that out, and that's what you want to do when you're painting something. You take the aspects that you like and you enhance them, or you don't. That's your creative ability, your artistic license on painting whatever it is you're painting. That's what makes what you're painting yours. So I was looking at this painting at this point, and I noticed how harsh the edges were along that cast shadow area. So I wanted to blend those edges so they just they weren't as harsh as they are looking right now. And over on the left hand side, I wanted a little bit darker color along the one edge. So here I am looking at, I'm looking at the painting, I'm looking at my setup, and I don't want my plum on this painting to look like it's like a cutout that's been pasted on top of that background. I want the plum to melt into that background. So in order to do that, you have to have some lost edges, you have to have some sharp edges, you need to intertwine some dark and light colors along the edges of the object that you're painting and the background. So here I am putting some dark colors along one edge, and then I'm going to put some lighter colors right next to that along that same edge. So it's kind of like a patchwork, if you will, and that allows your subject matter to look like it actually belongs sitting within the background that you've painted. So here I am putting in the lighter area along the bottom there, so you can understand what I'm talking about. I have a light area along the edge and I have a dark area along the edge, but they're kind of like, just like intermittent. You get dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. Also, the more I kept looking at my plum, I'm like, well, it almost gives the effect like it's floating on this table. It's not quite as grounded as I would like it to be. So I wanted to darken up that edge along the bottom of the cast shadow, kind of give it more of a look like it's sitting on the table. So here I am putting a little bit of a light area above that dark area along the edge of the plum. And here's where I was talking about as far as darkening that bottom edge so that the plum looks like it's actually sitting on that table. It just didn't seem like it was dark enough. It didn't seem as grounded as I knew it could be. So I darkened that area up. And then this is right after that is where I go in and I actually soften those edges in between the two highlights on the right hand side there, and I soften those edges going into the cast shadow. And the plum really sits nicely on that background after I do that. So all in all, I was extremely happy with this painting. It was a short, quick painting, and it just everything just kind of worked out nicely with it, and yeah, I was quite pleased. So be sure to stay tuned. After this painting, I'm going to give you some information on this particular painting, and I do have some other information as well. So stay tuned afterwards, and I will talk to you then. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial on how I painted this particular painting, and like I said, it was relatively simple. And if you go to my website, www.kennethbrant.com, there you will see in the navigation bar, the bar will be titled Reference Photos. Just click on that and you will see Plum reference photo. Click on that and you can download that particular picture. It's just a picture that I took of my setup of the plum sitting on the table. You can download that picture and you can change it any way you want. Make it, you can make a different color or change the contrast, or however, make it look however you want. What I'd really like you to do is paint it and then send it to me in an email, and I would like to then take your rendition of this painting and put it in my video and promote your artwork. So I mean, that's what the whole idea behind all of the putting our art on social media is, to promote our artwork so other people can see it. The more people that see it, the more you become recognized as an artist, and hopefully things will start to happen for you. So this is just another way that you can have that, and I'm more than happy to do it for you. On top of promoting my artwork, as well as everybody else's, I'm offering you the ability to take your painting to the next level. So my number is here on the screen, along with my email account, and be sure to give me a call. And I'm offering coaching assistance to help you take your painting to the next level. We all need help. We've all started somewhere, whether you are a beginner and just started working in oils, or an intermediate painter and you're just not sure really how to make your painting go from good to great, or even if you are just somebody that's been painting for years, but it's not really 100% sure on how to get your work out into the public. These are all things that I can help you with. So be sure to give me a call, and I'll give you all the information that you need to know to move your artwork to the next level. So if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Okay, thanks. Bye. Be sure to log into www.kennethbrant.com and sign up for my email newsletter. Everyone that signs up into my email newsletter will be placed into a drawing to win an original painting.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time.